Today, Nolly Elementary would like to recognize all of our December Leaders of the Month. We are so proud of these students for their outstanding leadership in the classroom, playground, lunchroom, and in always displaying the 7 habits at Nolly School. Today, I will recognize each student in each grade level and tell you a little something about them. Okay, starting off in kindergarten in Mrs. Craig's room, we have Allie Husick, who is proactive, puts first things first, and synergizes. Allie is a model citizen in Mrs. Craig's classroom. She puts 100% effort into her work each day, often earning a top quality work award for her efforts. Allie is kind and considerate of her classmates and teachers by being respectful of their learning and the teaching of her teachers. Mrs. Craig said, "I appreciate her leadership ways. In our room, this is very impactful. Way to go, Allie." In Mrs. Parton's room, we have Patrick Brogan, who is proactive. Patrick has a strong drive to always do his best. He is a hard worker in class and pushes himself to be even better. We also wanted to highlight that Patrick truly cares for everyone. He has such a kind and thoughtful heart. We are blessed to have him in our classroom. That is from Mrs. Parton and Mrs. Rawling. In Mrs. Rankin's room, we have Carson Capper, who puts first things first. Carson continues to work hard and models for his peers. He comes into the classroom in the mornings and gets right to work. Mrs. Rankin said he is a pleasure to have in kindergarten. And finally, in Mrs. Zukowski's room, we have Eddie Helms, who is proactive and puts first things first. Eddie puts first things first in kindergarten. He takes his time on his work and he pays attention to details, which positively affects his work quality. He is also a very kind and helpful friend. Way to go, Eddie. In first grade, in Mrs. Beard's room, we have Rylan Staten. Mrs. Beard said, "I chose Rylan for being so proactive in our classroom. He is always the first one to help and volunteers to take on classroom responsibilities when he sees a need. He always does this with a smile." Mrs. Beard said, "We appreciate your hard work and kind heart. Keep it up, Rylan." In Mrs. Bowser's room, we have Stella Picari, who begins with the end in mind. Stella sets weekly reading goals for herself. She has already read 50 books for Mrs. Baker this year. She always turns in her weekly reading slips and reads 5 or more books each week. Way to go, Stella. In Miss Nagy's room, we have Logan Lloyd, who is proactive and seeks first to understand. Logan sets good examples of behavior in class. He follows directions, completes all of his work, and will ask for help if he doesn't understand something. Logan is a good friend to all. Way to go, Logan. In Mrs. Rector's room, we have Lily Dowdy, who is demonstrating all 7 habits. Mrs. Rector said Lily is a leader in our first grade classroom each and every day. Lily has a growth mindset, puts forth her best effort, and has a positive attitude. Keep up the outstanding work, Lily. In second grade, in Mrs. Grandin's room, we have Brantley Browning. Brantley synergizes with everyone. He has a positive attitude. He greets Mrs. Grandin each day with a huge smile and works well with everyone. Miss Frayne said he encourages everyone too. We are both so happy he came to Nolly and landed in our classroom. Way to go, Brantley. In Mrs. Slimak's room, we have Everly Yoakum, who demonstrates all 7 habits. Everly is a shining example of a student leader. She demonstrates all habits. She is also hardworking, kind, motivated, and enthusiastic. Ms. Slimak said, "I can also count on her to work well with others and show kindness to all. We are all so thankful to have Everly in our class every day." Way to go. In Mrs. Truax's room, we have Cora Belcher. Cora has really started second grade with a bang. She is responsible, helpful, and works well with others. She sets goals and works hard to achieve them. Keep shining, Cora. And in Mrs. Van Dorsten's room, we have Aurora Ranella, who synergizes. Aurora synergizes very well with her classmates. She gets along with everybody and is as sweet as can be. Way to go, Aurora. All right, moving on to third grade. First up in Mrs. Braley's room is Avery Walmer, who demonstrates all of the 7 habits. Avery demonstrates all of the 7 habits. She is a positive role model in every subject and is always giving her best. Every day she takes charge of her learning, is prepared, and is on task. Also, she thinks win-win and synergizes while working in groups. She is also respectful to others and lends a helping hand if someone or Mrs. Braley needs anything. Thank you, Avery, for spreading kindness in room 301. In Mrs. Esterly's room, we have Braden Sandifer, who puts first things first. Braden has worked extremely hard to put first things first. He is a helpful classmate to all and is great at coming in first thing in the morning and getting started on his work right away. Way to go, Braden. In Mrs. Stasnis's room, we have Braxton Kelly. Braxton Kelly is being chosen for the Leader of the Month for being proactive and putting first things first. Braxton not only does a great job of working through distractions and focusing on his own work, he is also an amazing helper when he is done. He helps the teachers and is also a friend if they don't understand or need a little help. Keep being a great role model, Braxton. And in Mr. Straub's room, we have Lincoln Moser, who thinks win-win. Lincoln is starting to grow and thrive in third grade. He is using his grit and growth mindset as he learns. He is a hard worker and he knows to work hard, so now he can play later. He enjoys working with others, but knows his hard work is going to pay off. Way to go, Lincoln. In Miss Sweeter's room, we have Josiah Moore, who puts first things first and sharpens the saw. Josiah is a focused student who is always putting first things first. He knows the importance of balancing schoolwork and fun. This approach helps him do well in school, inspire others, and stay energized. Way to go, Josiah. Okay, moving on to fourth grade. Our first student is Knighton Agnew in Mrs. Gardner's room. Knighton begins with the end in mind and puts first things first. Knighton is a new student at Nolly. During the first grading period, Knighton has changed his mindset to improve his work habits and behavior. He's putting first things first by working hard at home and at school. He is a leader in our classroom. We are so glad you are here, Knighton. In Mrs. Matson's room, we have Jediah Caulfield, who puts first things first. Jediah is a great student. He always makes sure to do his work on time and does it well. We can count on him to lead by example every day. Jediah is also a great helper in the class and gets his class job done, along with his schoolwork. Keep it up, Jediah. In Mrs. Oakes' room, we have Gracie Schaffner, who demonstrates all of the 7 habits. Gracie is a quiet leader who is always doing the right thing at the right time. She really embodies all of the habits with her caring nature, her positive attitude, and her willingness to work hard at every task. She makes an excellent role model, and I'm so lucky to have her this year. That was from Mrs. Oakes. And from Mrs. Toast's room, we have Levi Hall, who puts first things first. Levi is such a responsible fourth grader. He always puts first things first as he gets ready for all of the day's classes each morning. He is proactive by looking ahead and making sure he has completed his work and his job of distributing our class mail. What a great start to fourth grade, Levi. And finally, our fifth grade students. The first one is in Mrs. Adamson's room. It is Jalen Price, who is proactive. Jalen is a hard worker and caring student. She is always in charge of her learning and the many responsibilities that go along with fifth grade. Her proactive approach is recognized and appreciated by others. Keep it up, Jalen. In Mrs. Bellis's room, we have Jada Green. Mrs. Bellis said, I am so proud of the student that Jada Green represents. She works extremely hard in class, puts first things first, and treats her teachers and friends with kindness and respect. Keep up the great work, Jada. In Mrs. Demorowski's room, we have Audrey Flynn, who puts first things first. Audrey Flynn is being nominated for putting first things first. Audrey is always focused in class and uses work time during class and study hall productively to get assignments done. Audrey works to her full potential and always completes top quality work. Audrey is a quiet leader that puts first things first and sets a great example for others. And in Mrs. Sewell's room, we have Jameson Morris, who puts first things first. Jameson has been working so hard in class this year. He's asking good questions and using every moment of study hall to get his work done. Way to go, Jameson. Congratulations to all of the Nolly Leaders of the Month. The entire staff here at Nolly is so proud of you. Please keep up the great work and your outstanding leadership. Way to go.